It's circling. There we go. Evening all. Sorry we're late. We had some technical difficulties. Our second show. We've upgraded StreamYard and had some difficulty figuring out the mic and the video connectivity. But here we are. We're going to iron things out. I'm Jason Jensen. I'm a private investigator and a co-founder of the Utah, well, sorry, not Utah anymore, but of the Cold Case Coalition. And with me is my co-founder and partner in crime here on this show, Kara Porter.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to assist our other guest in getting in.
We're very ambitious. We went from just her and I. Now we're trying to bring in guests, and you just made things a little bit more challenging and difficult than it needed to be. But we'll iron out the kinks. So,
yes.
Good evening. This is our second episode. Kara, where shall we start with the show tonight?
Well, first I'd like to. Okay, no, I'm really.
Vent.
I don't
if
like
you want to vent.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, we've lost our second guest, so that's okay. We don't have. We'll save it. Appreciate it. So Jason and I are both co-founders of the Cold Case Coalition, which used to be the Utah Cold Case Coalition until we went national 2 or 3 weeks ago. Anyway, and so we were founded back in 2017, and I am the lawyer founder. Jason is the private investigator founder, and then Tom Harvey is our journalist co-founder. One of the things we're hoping to do, besides stumping Jason, which is everyone's life ambition, is that we do want to have serious talks about things that we don't see talked about a lot out there. There's a lot of great podcasts and everything, or discussions about specific cases, and we are going to talk about specific cases, but we want to provide some practical help too, and advice, and share what we've learned and stump Jason. And tonight, for example, we wanted to talk about something we mentioned in our last episode, which is what to do when your adult child goes missing. And for that, we thought, well, unfortunately, we have someone that can kind of elaborate on what happens. And I'm talking about a child who's, not a minor, because then the police would treat it very differently, but still is not really, somebody in their late teens or early 20s. And so we would like to introduce you to Marilyn Stevenson. She is a member of our board, and she was invited to be on our board because of, not just because she brings that perspective, but because she's also extremely helpful, has been a terrific volunteer for us. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk to Marilyn about her experience, and then we wanted to stump Jason and ask him, Jason, what do you think people should do to try to prevent this, or to try to act maybe differently, to respond differently than the police are? So we want to hear Marilyn's experience first. And Marilyn, thank you for sharing this.
Thank you for having me.
I can see behind you I can see that's Justin. Tell us a little about Justin.
Oh, Justin was a mama's boy. First and foremost, he loved his siblings. He loved his nieces and nephews more than anything. But he was just a good guy, very charismatic. Got hooked on some drugs, which so often happens nowadays. He had several surgeries and been put on some pretty heavy-duty drugs for a few years. And when I asked the doctor to take him off of those, I didn't realize what problems I was creating. So they stopped him cold turkey, and he couldn't do that. and went out and started trying to buy them off the streets, which got him into a lot of trouble. And he searched for help and had a hard time. We all tried to find him help. It is really hard. Parents don't know where to turn. And then when he went missing, I knew something was serious.
And let's talk about that. And it's very interesting because people don't realize, and you do expect doctors to realize, I guess. But I know someone who had been on what was supposed to be a mild opioid, and went cold turkey. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone sicker and more,
Yeah.
I mean, literally thinking that she's on the verge of death type of thing.
Yeah.
But obviously he's there. This is not an uncommon, whether it's prescription drugs, whether it's, on the street drugs, it's not an uncommon thing.
It is not.
So Justin, okay, tell us how you knew that Justin was missing, not just that you hadn't heard from him, but actually missing.
Well, like I said, he was a mama's boy, and he had called me early in the morning, around 6 o'clock, and he said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to work." He was a roofer for Norda, and they were working on the parking garage at the IMC hospital in Murray. And he said, "Can you meet me for lunch?" And I said, "Gosh, I'd love to. I'll be there." And he said, "Okay, I'll see you at noon," and hung up. And then I thought, now, wait a minute. Does he want me to meet him in the front or in the back? Because the IMC hospital is a pretty big hospital.
Huge.
And I had met him in both places. Mm-hmm. And so I tried calling back about 10 minutes later and did not get an answer. Never heard from him again.
So in your case, you hadn't, it's not a situation where, well, he's maybe moved out and you haven't heard from him for a few weeks, a kind of a common situation. You had actually spoken to him just minutes before he, I guess, disappeared.
Yeah.
So at what point did you go to law enforcement and say, my son's missing?
Gosh. I did wait because I just didn't know what to do. So I waited a month. He went missing the end of November. So he missed Thanksgiving, which was a few days later. He missed his birthday. He missed his niece's birthday, his sister's birthday, and then Christmas. And I thought, okay, I've got to start facing reality here. And so I started calling law enforcement. And gosh, they just didn't know what to do. I had police tell me, "Oh, well, he's an adult. Lots of people decide they want to fly under the radar, or that they want to leave and start a new life. And that's all okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that."
Did you try to have I understand they've probably heard this 100 times from people. But this is different. My son is different. And I'm sure they hear that in every case. But did you try to explain how this was different, that you had literally just talked to him a few minutes and now he can't be reached at all? And did you try to give him that explanation?
I did. And it was interesting. So he was in South Salt Lake when I spoke with him, but he was going to Murray, and I live in Sandy. And so I would call one police department, and they would have me talk to someone, and they'd say, "Gosh, that really wouldn't be us. Call the department where you live in Sandy." And I'd call Sandy, and they're like, "Well, it wouldn't be us. He wasn't even living here and wasn't here." So
it
really went back and forth.
That is something that would be fodder for a future discussion, because it's very interesting how that works, who has jurisdiction. And
Right.
we've had cases, and that is actually a very good topic. We've had cases where somebody will say, no, he disappeared from here. Yeah, but his car was found here. Yeah, but he was last seen here.
Right.
And it gets extremely, we have a case in New Mexico where they were working it, and all of a sudden they said, wait a second, closed, and they just closed the whole case because they realized he had last been seen in a place in Utah. And so they literally said, we should not have even been working this case, and they shut it down. We ought to talk about that in a later thing. But was there, and Avery asked a question about when did he disappear? And it was in November of 2017.
November 2017.
You know, it was the exact week that we held our first press conference as a coalition. It's just hard to believe it's been 5 years on these. So was there ever an agency that said, okay, we will take this and we will investigate it?
Salt Lake PD finally took the information. No one else would even actually file it and make it a case. They took the information and didn't know what to do with it, so they just set it aside. I really think everyone just thought, this is another guy who's in trouble with drugs, and his mom's scared, and
Right.
they just let it go.
Well, one thing you hear when it's an adult, even a young adult, is that adults have a right to go missing.
Yes.
And which they do legally, but in a case like this, that must have been hard to hear. So
Very.
do you know what kinds of investigative steps they took in his case?
They didn't do anything to begin with. The first thing was I had a federal marshal contact me. And, he's been missing for 6 months. And they said, Kay, was he going to testify in a case? And I said, not that I know of. And she said, right. Have you talked to the police? And I expressed my frustration to her. And she said, I will set up a meeting with the detective that is over his case in Salt Lake PD, which she did.
Okay. So did they talk to friends or witnesses? Did they interview people?
No. I gave them a list of names and phone numbers. And the first person that was contacted, they had the case for over a year, and they contacted a friend of his. And she was like, oh my gosh, Marilyn. But the detective even told her that was the first person she had called.
Okay. Do you know if they did anything like try to get, some deep dive phone records or anything like that? Because there's a time limit on getting those.
No, we had hired a private investigator that tried to get Salt Lake PD to request the phone records. They did not. A year later, when we're doing a podcast, because nothing has still happened with the case, trying to get information out there, they did finally request the phone records. But, you're talking 2019 now that they're request in the fall of 2019, they requested the phone records.
Well, and we had a recent experience with the coalition. It wasn't a cold case, but I'm a lawyer and sometimes I can help out because they don't keep the real deep dive information that long. They keep some of the basic stuff, some of the cell tower pings or whatever, but they don't keep the deep dive stuff. In some cases, it's deleted in 60 or 90 days. And a lot of times law enforcement will not request it because they don't have grounds for a warrant, right? There's no probable cause for a warrant. And really the only way you can do it sometimes is unless you have a right to the data, the first time we did it, the guy used his sister's phone. And so I was able to get a court order on that almost immediately. The second time it was a lot harder. But that's one of the things I want to talk to Jason about when we stump him. What is the current status? Because I do want to bring Jason in and kind of say, okay, Jason, what is there anything about what we're hearing that stumps you? But what's the current status of Justin's case?
They said it will never be a cold case. However, there's two people so when they finally got the phone records, and in 2021, we finally had a detective that actually started working his case. No one really worked it until then. And he called everyone on the phone list. There are a couple of people that he can't get a hold of. However, those people are also people that there's no they can't find anything on. I mean, not just police wise, but trying to track them down. It's like they disappeared within months after Justin disappearing. So we'll never find them. They've given us a couple of different theories, and they know some of the people who were with him the last day that he was alive.
Okay. I'm going to bring Jason in now. And I am going to ask him, Jason, you've been listening to Marilyn's story, and you're familiar with the story as well. Is there anything about what you've heard that stumps you?
Well, yeah, I mean, this tragic thing is about cold case missing persons is, like you were alluding to, Kara, is oftentimes by time it comes to us, the definition of a cold case is 3 years of inactivity. By then, it's too late to be doing some of those deep dive records. So you can't really do as good of a startup like you can if it's a warm or a hot case. If that's the scenario, you want to get the records from the bank, from the phone company, from anything that would be relevant to show a fresh trail where to find the missing person. Here we are, since 2017, Justin's been missing, and we haven't seen hide nor hair of him. So it's like, well, what happened to him?
Okay,
Because,
but how does a parent do that? Okay.
Right.
Your average parent go and remember, this is an adult.
Right.
You're not typically often not on the account of the adult. A lot of time, how do you just go in there and say, my adult son is missing. I want into his bank account. I want his Facebook account. I want his, and they're like, sure you do, stalker, so how do you get that in this kind of situation?
Right. The contingencies are similar to what is your plan if there's a fire in your home? You got to have an evacuation plan. My encouragement is for everybody, even though your child is an adult, is to set up a GoFindMe plan. Here's where I bank, here's my passwords for my email and stuff like that. And you don't have to share that with that family member or friend, but at least have accessibility to it where you say everything's in my desk drawer or something like that.
Okay.
So that they know where to find those things.
Still stumping. My job is to try to stump you. So let's assume that where your adult child banks, okay, and the Facebook page or something, or you want the messages and everything.
Right.
Just because it doesn't mean you're going to get it. So, what are you recommending for somebody to be able to? I mean, like I said, this last case, we had to spend 2 days. They had to have multiple meetings at the courthouse trying to figure out how we could get this deep dive data, because the person seeking the data did not own the phone.
Right.
So what are you suggesting? I'm stumping you here, that somebody do ahead of time so that their mother's not reading their Facebook messages, but the mother could get their bank account information if they go missing.
Right. Well, oftentimes we can go back to the old school techniques where you have like a safe deposit box over at the bank. People don't typically use them anymore, but that is certainly something that can be done. But mind you, the bank isn't just going to let anybody walk through and say, "Hey, I'm the family member." You're going to have still like a letter of representation or something if that's the case. And it's like, how does the court know when to trigger that? So that's really, I hate to admit, stumping, because
Okay.
a lot of times you got to turn to a lawyer at that point and say, how do I get access? My son or my adult daughter said this information's at the bank. How do I get there?
I
And
got an
I
idea.
can't answer that. I would say talk to an attorney.
And I would say talk to an attorney ahead of time. Okay. This is not the area of law that I practice, but I get a lot of inquiries about it. I could see a limited power of attorney. You can limit a power of attorney to specific circumstances, only this purchase of a car or only this or that. I believe that we could probably, I'm just winging this here, we could probably craft a power of attorney that just says, in the event that I have not been heard from for more than 7 or 6, whatever the person's willing
22
to.
hours, or
It could either be like, literally it could be 8 hours if you live at home, or it could be 2 weeks if you travel. In that event, I hereby authorize this person to access these things. Now, could somebody abuse that?
yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, but everything can be abused. I'm just saying that I've had to do this twice now to get these emergency deep dive records, and I'm talking way deep dive tracing the phone more than the pings. The first one, lickety split. Second one, days of just problems. But what other kinds of things do you think that a person should do, like to try to get, let's say, to try to overcome the you have a right to go missing mentality?
Right. Well, what's really important in that scenario is to find that person that knows what their plan was supposed to be, where they missed a doctor's appointment or failed to show to court, so that you can retrace their last known steps before they went missing, because it's important to kind of figure out who knew, what their plans were, who were they associating with at the time, were they supposed to be picked up, were they, driving themselves, was there a last person that they contacted, who was closest to them, who was mad at them, who was.
And are you recommending the parents do this?
Right. If they don't have somebody doing this for them, they're going to have to do it themselves. And I'll give you an example, and I can't remember her name. There was a woman that went missing by the name of China a couple of years ago, and lucky for her, the family had all that information. They had access to her accounts. They had access to her phone. I think even her sisters actually had that app where it's find my phone or whatever. And so they learned that she had left the night before that she went missing, and actually went to her ex-boyfriend's house, like an hour away. So they knew that it wasn't lost data. So when they contacted the ex-boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend gave them contradictive information from the data, where he said, "Oh, I don't know, I haven't seen her." Well, that was a red flag, but it was such a flag that it triggered law enforcement to see the significance, and ultimately they ended up finding her body relatively quickly. But had there not been knowledge from the data that she went to see her ex-boyfriend, there would have been no record of it, because it was the ex.
Okay.
There was no, "Hey, I'm going to go see, Billy," and it didn't work out that way.
And one of Avery has pointed out that that another woman had disappeared, and the friends made a website, and they reached out on social media and things like that. And at some point, the parents are going to have to, I guess, forget that, like you said, to trigger the interest. You and I have had many debates over the last 5 years, because I tend to be one that says, let law enforcement do their job on the hot cases, give them a chance. and then you're always just, no, it's been 2 minutes. And so I'm going to give my opinion about Gabby Petito. But this one we tend to agree more on than usual, because there is this, you have a right to go missing thing. And then sometimes it's too late at the end.
Right, because really, if somebody closest to them is the reason for the sounding the alarm, the police cannot just simply generalize saying, well, oftentimes somebody disappears for the weekend. Do you know if they have a new friend, or, maybe they went to Las Vegas or something and just didn't tell you? If somebody says no, they would let me know. That should be some consideration that law enforcement has to embrace. And if there was a missed meeting that was completely out of character, that has to be considered. You can't simply ignore it saying, well,
No,
there's no explanation why Justin, like all of a sudden, didn't answer mom's call and didn't show up for her meeting. It was a fresh agreement. It wasn't something that was easily forgotten days or weeks later. There is really no reason to not jump on Justin's case, because there was an expectation. It was a fresh meeting, an arrangement.
Yeah.
And then he was a no-show.
I mean, I guess to some extent, it's a discretion call. I mean, I guess I would think, okay, if I didn't show up in court someday, I have not ever done that in 35 years. I would hope that somebody would say, well, she has a right to go missing. I hope somebody would actually say she didn't go to court, she's never missed, and would see it that way.
On the door.
Right, and actually would say this is out of character.
Yes, but how do they know it's out of character? But in fairness to the police, and I do want to, we had another topic or two, and I do want to make sure we cover it tonight because it's very timely and relates to this. But I do think it's a little hard for them to judge, because what parent, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm just, backing the blue no matter what, but I can see that a parent could say, trust me, this is out of character, because, and they might say, well, this mother doesn't know what's in character. Her son does drugs. I mean, am I condoning that? I'm just saying it's not a black and white on this. I think sometimes it is. If my mother has a doctor's appointment and doesn't make it for the first time, and that's different. But I just think there's a gray area, and sometimes they guess wrong.
Right.
And then we can always get on the fact that if the missing white woman syndrome, and whether or not there's proportional responses to certain people going missing, but that is for a later discussion. Hey, Marilyn, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
Marilyn has done wonders and is not given up, and neither have we.
That's right.
We'll continue to help you, Marilyn. That somebody out there knows, and we really just keep making noise and make sure that the right person eventually has a conscience, because eventually we all have a child and we all get concerned about what would happen. What would we, how would we feel if our child went missing or was abducted or just didn't show up? And we all, at some point, this person is going to be in the same shoes as you and will have a conscience, and he's going to say something or she's going to say something. And we hope that, they break their silence and come forward.
Someone will someday. We'll keep talking.
They will.
Thank you.
See you soon, Marilyn. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Another thing that can kind of happen on some of these is sometimes you can generate additional interest in older cases or cold cases through rewards.
Right.
And I do want to say this: Utah is the only state in which there is a reward on every single cold case. And Jason, what's the reason for that?
Well, the reason for that is your geniusness, because you decided to roll the dice and gamble that we need to have, $3,000, sometimes $5,000 rewards on every stinking case in our state. And it's like, who's going to pay for this? If everyone calls on every one of these cases, how are we going to fund it all? And we've been blessed. After 5 years, we've not hit that wall yet, but we'll maintain that a reward on every case in Utah?
We always will, because we said we felt that there was disproportionality in rewards, socioeconomic status, in the nature of the victim's occupation or race or things like that. And so we will always do that. We were worried at first, but then of course somebody said, you're not going to get 200. At first we thought it was 200. Now it's well over 400. But we do offer a reward on every case. If all of a sudden 10 people come forward, and we might have to do a fundraiser, but that's a good problem to have. Now, recently,
definitely.
You recently offered your own reward in a case that is near and dear to us. What did you offer last week that was big news?
Right. And let's be clear, this is not a coalition offer. This was a personal gesture from me. And it's because I feel confident that a reward in this case will make a difference. And we're talking about Rosie Tapia, the whole reason why the coalition was formed initially. And where, in my opinion, and you may disagree, the reason where rewards come into play is if there's a third party, a witness that can come forward and give information. And sometimes it has to be a high enough reward to incentivize them to break silence because of some bond or some relationship they may have existing with this person that they're going to be revealing as some level of responsibility for either a disappearance or, in this case, Rosie's death.
And I'll indicate one thing: the coalition, we can't do an individual reward of 100,000 because we are on the hook for rewards in every single case in the state. But we definitely appreciate it when people like Jason or other people will step in and help with rewards, because I do think that's useful. Although here's what's interesting: we've only had a few times that people have called and specifically said, "I'm calling because I want the reward."
Right.
And by the way, we don't begrudge that at all. We have one right now, and if she's right about that this person is out there and alive and not missing, and we can prove it, we are happy. We are happy, and the family's happy that we're going to give her that reward.
Right.
Now, let me stump you, okay, on rewards. What do you say? And we've actually had this. We've had this in a somewhat recent case. What do you say when the defense lawyer said, on a case involving an arrest, the defense lawyer says, well, this witness is biased, they're just in it for the reward, especially a huge $100,000 reward?
Well, yeah, that would kind of pose a problem, because that's actually becomes a jury question. They could actually pose to the jury that, hey, you don't have to believe this witness or this informant, because they may actually be here to say whatever they're saying simply because they've been incentivized monetarily. So I would hope that the facts get vetted out by law enforcement when they interview this witness that comes forward, that they can say that he knew it or she knew enough information that only the killer would know. It's called guilt conscious information that was shared from the actor to that witness, that will solidify and overcome any claim that the witness was simply responding to a reward offer.
I mean, that's the thing. You always have to have enough facts. I mean, this is no different. If anything, it's, I mean, how often do they use tips from cellmates, for example?
Right.
And frankly, those are kind of iffy in a lot of, you're not dealing with, anyway, I won't say what I was thinking there, but I tend to be a skeptic on some things, including what I think is a slight overuse of jailhouse confessions. Oh yeah, I was in that guy's cell and he said, yeah, this and this and this. But they are always hoping to get something knocked off their sentence or something, but we still use those. And rewards have been used throughout time. I was going to tell you another reason to use a reward is you just never know. There is a relatively famous case in Utah. The guy is a suspected serial killer. We suspect him of more than a dozen murders. He's in the Utah State Prison based on 2 murders, and then he's nearly killed someone in Montana. He claimed the reward on one of his victims. He claimed that he had had a cellmate who told him where the body was. And anyway, so, and that was that $1,000 reward back in the 70s, and he managed to basically indict himself with the information that he told, trying to get the money.
That's why they have those stories on the news or whatever, stupid criminals.
I mean, I think he thought, I don't know. I was doing some looking at rewards. I was surprised that attorneys have been able to claim rewards.
I hate to interrupt, but going back to Marilyn's story about Justin, I think because somebody out there knows what happened to Justin, not so much the actor, but probably more than one person was involved or has knowledge of it. There should be an increased reward in Justin's case. And in fact, me and Marilyn have talked about that. And I think the last level of the reward was somewhere around $5,000, but I think she's working on increasing that. But I think it's probably premature to say what she's doing. But I know that at some point, an increased reward may actually make sense in Justin's case.
And I think it often does. I mean, the big question is always, where do you get the money?
Right.
I mean, that's the question in everything. I mean, law enforcement can't even afford $700 to do uploads to some of the DNA databases, which we can talk about in a later episode. And so they don't have any money. Is South Salt Lake going to, or whoever claims jurisdiction, are they going to offer the money? No. Sometimes the person might work somewhere. There was a murder of a Pizza Hut delivery woman.
Right.
And so Pizza Hut offered a reward, or someone worked for a bank, they offered a reward. Because it really does come down to money. We're a volunteer nonprofit, and it's not like we have money sitting in a huge bank account. We have people who've said they're willing to contribute a certain amount if a reward is claimed. Where do you get it? Which is another thing down the road. We had more things planned for tonight, but due to it's weird because we just upgraded our technology, and that was the curse. We should have stuck with the lower level subscription that we had last week, because it worked great. So we actually are at 7:00. And so we had another guest scheduled for a new segment that we're going to start doing called Your Cold Case Story. This one is close to home. So I hope we'll have that person on next week.
We'll work out the bugs and have her on next week. It's an important story that needs to come out.
Yeah, it is. And it's important not just to us, but to everybody. So we will work out the bugs. The funny thing is we tested it earlier, but anyway, that's just the way we are all volunteers on this coalition. If there's anyone out there that takes pity on us, that knows how to do like StreamYard and social media and all that, because feel free to tell us that we're terrible at it and that you'd like to help. So
that'd be great. Yes.
All right. So we're done with this particular Stump Jason episode 2.
Well, it sounds like you stumped me last week, but because of technology, no one stumped me today.
No, you just admitted earlier that you were stumped about how.
I don't remember that. We'll have to play this back because I thought I answered the question. I think I said something along the line that could stump me, but I don't think I was like answerless.
I'm going to have an official court report or transcript made of this thing because you were stumped. But it is important. I am serious. I think we may want to. One of the things we try to do is we do try to solve some things. We may actually want to put together this limited power of attorney that if
just as a form and put it on our page
and then put it on a website or something. I mean, since we're winging it here, I don't know if that would even work, but why not try? I'm just telling you, as the lawyer who has to try to talk a judge into signing something when it would help me enormously if I had a power of attorney that said, if I've been missing more than this long, and then yes, I'm going to have to prove to the court that he has been missing longer than this. And we always have to be super careful that if it's like an adult woman or a man, or that it's not some ex that's stalking them.
Right.
I mean, as a private investigator, you have to screen things like that all the time. What is the real motive for this person to hire me to find this person, right? Don't you have to look at that? So, but I'm just telling you that this comes up a lot. And you know what? I think we ought to do it. I think we ought to put something together. And
I think it's just a general form that's fill in blank.
Maybe we can even put together some kind of a general website resources, like a plan. What do you do? Your adult child is missing, or your adult sibling, whatever. You know what? That's not a bad idea.
I agree.
Okay. But you were still stumped, just FYI for the record.
I'll take your word for it.
All right. So next time when we will overcome our technology things, we have some super interesting topics. Just to conclude, we're trying to also cover sometimes competing viewpoints in a dignified way, and particularly where Jason and I don't agree on things. Like, when do you get involved in a new case? So we'll do more of that in an upcoming episode. Thank you to everyone that stuck with us and watched this, and we will see you next time. And thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you.